Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing deck of the Aurora and watched the crystal towers of SciFiPrime grow larger as his ship approached the docking station. The towers stretched high into the purple sky like frozen lightning, and each one housed a different department of the Galactic Council. Jake had made this journey dozens of times over the past 5 years, but the sight still amazed him. 47 different alien species had built this place together as a symbol of their unity and peace. The Aurora was not the largest ship in the docking bay, but it was one of the newest. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago, and humans were still considered the new kids in a very old neighborhood. Most of the other species had been part of the Council for thousands of years, and some had been founding members. When it was created 3,000 years ago, after the last Great War ended, Jake walked through the corridors of his ship toward the main meeting room where Ambassador Linda Hayes was reviewing her notes for today's session. Linda had gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake knew she was one of the smartest people he had ever met. She had been working with alien species since Earth first made contact, and she understood their cultures better than most humans understood their own neighbors. "Good morning, Linda," Jake said as he entered the room. "Are you ready for another day of galactic politics?" Linda looked up from her tablet and smiled. "As ready as anyone can be when dealing with 47 different opinions about everything. The Xerians want to discuss trade routes again, and the Vulcan Empire is still upset about mining rights in the Outer Rim." Jake poured himself coffee from the machine in the corner. Coffee was one of the few Earth products that had become popular throughout the galaxy, and Jake was proud that his homeworld had contributed something useful to galactic civilization. "What about the humans on the agenda today?" "The usual questions about our military museums and why we spend so much time studying something called warfare," Linda said with a slight frown. "The other species find it strange that we preserve weapons and battle strategies from our past. They think it shows we have not fully embraced the path of peace." Jake nodded and took a sip of his coffee. This was an old conversation between Earth and the Council. Most alien species had abandoned their military traditions centuries ago. When they joined the Council and embraced what they called the Great Peace, they had destroyed their weapons and converted their armies into exploration teams and diplomatic corps. The idea of keeping museums full of tanks and fighter jets seemed primitive to them. The communication system in the room buzzed, and a mechanical voice announced that they were cleared to dock. Jake and Linda gathered their materials and prepared to board the transport that would take them to the council chambers. The transport was a smooth gliding vehicle that moved through transparent tubes connecting all the towers of SciFiPrime. As they rode toward the main council building, Linda pointed to a group of tall blue beings walking through a garden below them. "Those are Altarian diplomats," she said. "Their species gave up warfare 800 years ago, and they have not had a single conflict since then. They think violence is a disease that can be cured through proper education and meditation." Jake watched the peaceful aliens as they tended to flowering plants that changed colors in the afternoon light. "What do they do if someone threatens them?" "They talk," Linda replied. "They believe that every problem can be solved through discussion and compromise. Most species in the Council share that belief. It has worked for 3,000 years. The transport arrived at the council chambers, and Jake and Linda walked through the main entrance. The chamber was a massive dome filled with seats arranged in circles around a central speaking area. Each species had their own section designed to accommodate their physical needs. The aquatic depths dwellers had water-filled booths, while the silicon-based Christek had platforms that could support their heavy bodies. Jake found his seat in the human section and watched as representatives from dozens of worlds took their places. The session began with the traditional greeting in the ancient language of the first council members. Then the current speaker began reviewing the day's agenda. Most of the items were routine matters of trade and resource allocation. Ambassador Hayes was called to speak about Earth's latest cultural exchange program. She stood gracefully and walked to the central platform where a translation device would broadcast her words in dozens of languages simultaneously. The people of Earth are honored to share our history and traditions with our galactic neighbors, she began. We offer tours of our historical sites and museums to any species interested in learning about human development. A representative from the Nexus Collective raised one of his forearms to ask a question. Ambassador Hayes, why do humans maintain so many displays of primitive weapons and battle tactics? Do you not trust in the power of peace to solve all conflicts? Linda smiled patiently. We preserve our history to remember where we came from and to honor those who came before us. Our museums help us understand the mistakes of the past so we do not repeat them. The Nexus representative looked confused. But surely you do not believe such crude methods have any place in modern civilization. The galaxy has moved beyond the need for violence. Before Linda could answer, the chamber's communication system activated with an emergency alert. All conversation stopped as a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. The image showed deep space beyond the galaxy's edge, where something was moving in the darkness. The speaker's voice was calm but concerned. We have received a transmission from the Void Seekers. They have been silent for over 2 centuries, but now they send us this message. The holographic display changed to show a massive figure shrouded in shadows. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. Children of the new galaxy, it said. We have watched your pathetic attempts at civilization from the depths of space. You have grown soft and weak in your pursuit of peace. The time has come for us to reclaim what was always ours. We return to restore the natural order. Prepare for harvest. The message ended and the chamber fell silent. Jake felt his heart racing as he looked around at the alien faces filled with fear and confusion. Most of these species had never heard of the Void Seekers except in ancient history. Lessons. They were the monsters from the old stories that parents used to frighten children into good behavior. The speaker tried to maintain order as dozens of representatives began talking at once. Some suggested immediate diplomatic contact, while others wanted to flee to the outer systems. None of them seemed to know what to do when faced with a threat that could not be negotiated with or reasoned away. Jake caught Linda's eye across the chamber and saw something he had never seen there before. She was not afraid or confused like the others. Instead, she looked almost relieved, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire career. She activated her personal communication device and sent a single, coded message back to Earth. The message was simple and would have meant nothing to anyone listening, but Jake understood its significance. After 3,000 years of pretending to be just another peaceful species in a galaxy full of pacifists, humanity was about to stop hiding what they really were. The Void Seekers thought they were returning to conquer a weak and defenseless civilization, but they had chosen the wrong species to test first. Earth had been waiting for this day, and now the galaxy was about to learn why humans had never stopped studying war. Admiral Kate Sullivan was reviewing supply reports in her office, deep beneath the Pentagon, when the coded message arrived from Ambassador Hayes. The message appeared on her secure terminal as a simple diplomatic update, but Kate understood its real meaning immediately. She had been waiting 15 years for this moment, and now it was finally here. Kate pressed a button on her desk and spoke into the intercom. Colonel Barnes to my office immediately. Authorization Omega 7. Within minutes, Colonel Rick Barnes entered the office and sealed the door behind him. Rick was a tall man with steady eyes who had been Kate's second in command for over a decade. He knew every secret of humanity's true military capabilities and had helped design many of the systems that kept Earth's real strength hidden from the galaxy. They're coming, aren't they? Rick said as he took a seat across from Kate's desk. Kate nodded and turned her computer screen so Rick could see the message. The Void Seekers have announced their return. The Council is in panic and they're going to need our help. It's time to activate the deep protocol. Rick leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. After all these years of pretending to be peaceful farmers and merchants, we finally get to show them what humans are really capable of. Kate stood and walked to the large wall display that showed what appeared to be a normal map of Earth's solar system. She pressed her hand against a hidden scanner and the display changed completely. Suddenly, the map showed the real solar system with dozens of hidden military installations and weapon platforms that no alien had ever suspected existed. "Contact Dr. Miller and tell her to begin Phase 1 intelligence gathering," Kate said. "I want complete tactical assessments of every Void Seeker ship and battle formation within 72 hours. Also activate all sleeper agents in the Galactic communication networks." Rick nodded and began entering commands into his tablet. "What about the manufacturing facilities?" Kate smiled for the first time since receiving the message. "Begin conversion immediately. Every factory that has been producing farming equipment and civilian goods needs to switch to their real purpose. I want weapon systems rolling off the production lines within the week." While Rick coordinated with the hidden network of military commanders around the world, Kate activated the secure communication link to the International Space Station. The screen showed Commander Lisa Jiang floating in what appeared to be a simple research laboratory, but Kate knew the truth about the station's real capabilities. "Lisa, we're implementing Deep Protocol effective immediately," Kate said. "How long do you need to convert the station to full combat configuration?" Lisa's expression became serious as she absorbed the meaning of Kate's words. "Give me 6 hours, Admiral. The research modules are already designed to separate and reveal the weapon systems underneath. The crew has been training for this scenario for years." Kate nodded approvingly. Lisa and her team had spent years disguised as scientists conducting peaceful research while actually maintaining one of humanity's most advanced weapons platforms. The space station would serve as the command center for Earth's orbital defenses when the time came to fight. Dr. Susan Miller arrived at the Pentagon within the hour carrying a briefcase filled with intelligence reports that she had been secretly gathering for decades. Susan was a small woman with sharp features who spoke quietly but possessed one of the most brilliant strategic minds in human history. She had been studying every alien species in the galaxy since Earth first made contact, and she knew their weaknesses better than they knew themselves. "Admiral, the Void Seekers are exactly what our ancient records suggested they would be," Susan said as she spread holographic displays across the conference table. "They are a hierarchical species that values strength above all else. They see diplomacy as weakness, and they have spent centuries in deep space building weapons designed to destroy entire civilizations." Kate studied the images of massive mechanical ships that looked more like living creatures than traditional spacecraft. "What are their tactical preferences?" "They prefer overwhelming force and direct confrontation," Susan replied. "They will announce their attacks in advance because they believe fear is a weapon. They also underestimate species they consider primitive, which means they will not expect serious resistance from Earth." Colonel Barnes entered the room, carrying a tablet full of status reports from around the world. "Admiral, the conversion is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Mars mining colonies have revealed their true nature as weapons manufacturing facilities, and the asteroid belt installations are coming online. General Parker reports that ground forces are ready to implement urban defense protocols in all major cities." Kate looked at the reports with satisfaction. For decades, the galaxy had believed that humans were peaceful traders who happened to maintain a few historical museums about something called warfare. They had no idea that every human settlement included hidden weapon caches and that every civilian had been trained in basic combat tactics through what aliens believed were recreational activities. "What about our people in the galactic government?" Kate asked, but Susan smiled slightly. "Every human diplomat, trader, and tourist has been gathering intelligence for years. We have detailed plans for every major alien city, and we know the location of every important military facility in the galaxy. The other species trusted us completely because they thought we were harmless." Kate walked to the window of her office and looked out at the city of Washington below. To any alien observer, it would look like a normal human settlement with busy streets and tall buildings. They would never suspect that every structure had been designed with defense in mind, and that the entire city could be converted into a fortress within hours. "Begin Phase 2 implementation," Kate ordered. "Contact all human settlements throughout the galaxy. and tell them to prepare for extraction or defensive operations as appropriate. Also send word to our deep space monitoring stations that they are authorized to reveal themselves if necessary. Rick nodded and began sending coded messages to human outposts that the aliens believed were simple trading posts and research stations. In reality, they were sophisticated intelligence-gathering facilities staffed by military personnel, who had been waiting years for permission to drop their civilian covers. As the afternoon progressed, reports began arriving from around the world and throughout the solar system. The Luna City mining facility had transformed into a massive weapons production center. The Europa research station had activated its hidden military communication arrays. Even the small human colony on Titan had revealed defensive systems that could protect against a full-scale invasion. Kate felt a sense of pride as she watched humanity begin to show its true face to the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the other species had enjoyed peace because they believed that warfare was a thing of the past. They had forgotten that predators still existed in the universe and that someone needed to be ready to fight them when they returned. Dr. Miller approached Kate with a final report. Admiral, I have completed the psychological analysis of the Void Seekers based on their message to the Council. They are supremely confident and they expect total victory with minimal resistance. They see this as a harvest rather than a war. Kate turned from the window and looked at her senior staff. Then they are about to learn the most important lesson in galactic history. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is having warriors so skilled that no one dares to test them. The secure communication system activated, and Ambassador Hayes appeared on the screen from her ship near SmiledHFY. Admiral, the Council is requesting immediate military assistance from all member species. They want Earth to contribute whatever defensive forces we can spare. Kate smiled at her old friend. Tell them that Earth will provide all the military support they need. Also inform them that our contribution might be somewhat larger than they expect. As night fell over Washington, Kate stood in the Pentagon's command center and watched as status reports arrived from every corner of human space. Weapon systems that had been disguised as civilian infrastructure were coming online. Ships that had masqueraded as cargo haulers were revealing their true nature as advanced warships. Soldiers who had pretended to be farmers and shopkeepers were reporting to their real units. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had never stopped being a warrior species. They had simply learned to hide their fangs behind smiles while they waited for the day when someone would be foolish enough to threaten their home. That day had finally arrived, and the Void Seekers were about to face an enemy unlike anything they had encountered in their long and violent history. The first Void Seeker ships appeared at the edge of the Zarian system like nightmares emerging from the darkness of space. Commander Alex Turner watched through the sensors of his disguised reconnaissance vessel as the massive biomechanical creatures moved toward the peaceful mining worlds that had known nothing but prosperity for centuries. Alex's ship looked like a simple cargo hauler, but it was actually one of Earth's most advanced stealth vessels equipped with sensors that could analyze enemy capabilities from a safe distance. Lisa, are you getting these readings? Alex asked his navigation specialist, Lisa Chun, who was monitoring the alien vessels from her station. Lisa nodded as data flowed across her screens. These ships are unlike anything in our databases, Commander. They appear to be part machine and part living organism. The largest one is over 15 kilometers long, and it's generating energy signatures that suggest weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez looked up from his station with concern. Commander, I'm detecting multiple transmissions from the Zarian colonies. They're trying to establish diplomatic contact with the Void Seekers, but they're not receiving any response. Alex had expected this. The peaceful species of the galaxy believed that every conflict could be resolved through discussion and compromise. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that viewed negotiation as weakness and saw other species as resources to be harvested rather than equals to be respected. On the main display, Alex watched as the leading Void Seeker vessel approached the primary Zarian mining platform. The platform was a beautiful crystal structure that housed over 50,000 alien workers and their families. It had been built as a symbol of cooperation between species and had never needed defensive systems because the galaxy had been at peace for so long. The Void Seeker ship opened fire without warning. Beams of dark energy tore through the crystal structure like it was made of glass. Within minutes, the entire platform was reduced to debris and all 50,000 inhabitants were dead. The other mining platforms in the system began broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy, but the Void Seekers ignored them and continued their systematic destruction. "My God," Danny whispered as he watched the massacre unfold. "They're not even trying to capture resources or take prisoners. They're just killing everything." Alex forced himself to remain calm as he watched the peaceful Xerians die. This was exactly what Earth's intelligence services had predicted based on ancient records about the Void Seekers. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were predators who viewed other species as food and saw planets as hunting grounds to be cleared of inconvenient life forms. "Danny, send a coded burst transmission back to Earth," Alex ordered. "Include all sensor data on Void Seeker weapons and ship configurations. Also inform Admiral Sullivan that they are proceeding with total extermination protocols." While Danny prepared the transmission, Lisa continued analyzing the alien vessels. "Commander, the biomechanical components of their ships appear to be feeding on the energy released by the destruction they're causing. They're not just killing for strategic reasons. They're literally consuming the death and suffering they create," this information made Alex feel sick, but it also confirmed humanity's worst fears about what they were facing. The Void Seekers were not rational enemies who could be deterred or reasoned with. They were essentially cosmic parasites who had evolved to feed on the destruction of civilizations. The transmission to Earth went out in a focused beam that would appear to alien sensors as normal background radiation. Within hours, the data would reach Admiral Sullivan and help her prepare Earth's defenses for what was coming. Alex knew that he and his crew might not survive long enough to see the final battle, but their intelligence gathering mission could save billions of lives. As the Xerian system burned around them, Alex received new orders from Earth. He was to shadow the Void Seeker fleet and continue gathering intelligence while maintaining his cover as a civilian cargo ship. It was dangerous work, but Alex had been training for this mission his entire career. The Void Seeker fleet moved on to the Altarian homeworld, where they encountered their first attempt at organized resistance. The tall blue beings who had given up warfare centuries ago tried to defend their planet using converted mining equipment and civilian vessels. Their brave but futile gesture lasted less than an hour before their entire fleet was destroyed and their planet began burning under Void Seeker weapons. Alex watched the systematic destruction of world after world as the enemy fleet moved toward the galactic core. Each attack followed the same pattern. The Void Seekers would arrive without warning and ignore any attempts at communication. They would destroy all military assets first, then proceed to eliminate civilian populations and harvest planetary resources before moving on to their next target. At the Nexus collective homeworld, the four-armed aliens who had questioned humanity's military museums tried to negotiate with the Void Seekers by offering them advanced technology and trade agreements. The response was a bombardment that lasted for days until nothing remained of their crystal cities except radioactive craters. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council," Danny reported. "They're requesting immediate assistance from all member species with any available military forces." Alex authorized Danny to respond with their cover identity as a civilian cargo vessel. "Tell them we're evacuating refugees from the outer systems and will provide transportation assistance where possible." This was partially true. Alex's ship was equipped with expanded cargo holds that could carry hundreds of survivors if necessary. But his primary mission remained intelligence gathering, and he could not reveal his true capabilities without compromising Earth's strategic advantages. As they followed the Void Seeker fleet deeper into the galaxy, Alex began to understand the full scope of the enemy's strategy. They were not randomly attacking targets, but following a carefully planned route that would destroy the most important civilian populations first before moving on to military targets. They wanted to break the galaxy's will to resist by showing that even the most peaceful species could be exterminated without mercy. Lisa discovered something disturbing in her analysis of the enemy's movement patterns. Commander, according to these trajectories, the Void Seekers are saving Earth for last. They're systematically destroying every other major world first, before they plan to attack our home system. Alex felt a chill as he realized what this meant. The Void Seekers were not just conquering the galaxy randomly. They had studied their enemies and identified Earth as the most primitive and therefore easiest target to defeat. They wanted to save humans for last as a form of entertainment after they had eliminated all serious opposition. "Danny, send another transmission to Earth," Alex ordered. "Inform Admiral Sullivan that we estimate 36 to 48 hours before the enemy fleet reaches our system. Also tell her that they're treating us as their final prize rather than a serious threat." As Alex's ship continued its dangerous mission of shadowing the enemy fleet, he thought about his homeworld and, the family he might never see again. Earth looked defenseless to alien observers with its primitive technology and peaceful civilian population. The Void Seekers had no idea that they were approaching the most heavily defended system in galactic history, or that humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for exactly this moment. The irony was not lost on Alex that the galaxy's most peaceful species had maintained the most powerful military force in the universe. While other civilizations had abandoned warfare and embraced pacifism, humans had continued studying the art of war through their museums and cultural traditions. They had disguised their weapons as farming equipment and their soldiers as merchants and diplomats. Soon the Void Seekers would arrive at Earth expecting to find helpless farmers and shopkeepers. Instead, they would encounter Admiral Sullivan and the full might of humanity's hidden military machine. Alex smiled grimly as he watched the enemy fleet approach its final destination. The predators who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were about to learn why humans had refused to abandon their warrior heritage even in times of peace. The hunt was almost over, but the Void Seekers had chosen the wrong prey. Earth was ready and waiting for them. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain and watched as the final pieces of humanity's greatest deception fell into place. On the main display screen, dozens of human vessels appeared to be fleeing the solar system in panic as news of the Void Seeker approach spread throughout Earth's colonies. To any observer monitoring communications, it would look like humanity was abandoning their homeworld in terror. The truth was very different. Every ship that appeared to be carrying refugees was actually a heavily armed warship moving into strategic position around the solar system. The mining stations throughout the asteroid belt were dropping their disguises and revealing weapon platforms that had been hidden for decades. Even the moon itself was opening launch bays that had been concealed beneath fake mining operations. Colonel Rick Barnes approached Kate with a status report from the Orbital Command Center. "Admiral Operation Sleeping Giant is proceeding on schedule. All major defensive systems are online and our fleet is in position. The enemy will be in weapons range within 6 hours, Kate nodded as she studied the tactical display that showed the real deployment of Earth's forces. Hidden throughout the solar system were over 300 warships that aliens had never suspected existed. Each vessel was equipped with weapons technology that humanity had been secretly developing for centuries while pretending to be peaceful farmers and traders. "What about our intelligence assets?" Kate asked. "Dr. Miller reports that all human agents throughout the galaxy are providing real-time updates on Void Seeker movements and capabilities," Rick replied. "We have more detailed information about enemy tactics than they have about themselves." This was the result of decades of careful planning. Every human diplomat, trader, and tourist who had left Earth since first contact had been gathering intelligence about alien species and potential threats. While the galaxy saw them as harmless merchants, humanity had been building the most comprehensive intelligence network in galactic history. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his position near the edge of the solar system. His diplomatic vessel, Aurora, had been converted into a forward command ship equipped with sensors that could track the approaching enemy fleet. Admiral, the Void Seekers are maintaining their predicted course and speed. They show no signs of detecting our defensive preparations. Kate smiled with satisfaction. The enemy's arrogance was working in humanity's favor. The Void Seekers were so confident in their superiority that they had not bothered to conduct detailed reconnaissance of Earth's defenses. They expected to find a primitive world protected by nothing more than converted farming equipment and civilian volunteers. Commander Lisa Zhang's image appeared on another screen from the International Space Station, which had completed its transformation from research facility to orbital battle platform. Admiral, all weapon systems are charged and ready. We have target locks on the lead enemy vessels, and we're prepared to begin the engagement on your command. The space station had been humanity's greatest deception. For decades, aliens had visited what they believed was a peaceful research facility, where humans studied plant growth and conducted scientific experiments. They had no idea they were touring one of the most advanced weapons platforms ever constructed. Dr. Susan Miller entered the command center carrying the final intelligence. Assessment of enemy capabilities. Admiral, we have confirmed that the Void Seekers are using the same tactics that allowed them to dominate the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They rely on overwhelming firepower and psychological intimidation. They have never faced an enemy that was prepared for their attacks. Kate looked at the assessment with interest. What are their weaknesses? They are overconfident and inflexible, Susan replied. Their ships are powerful, but they operate as individuals rather than coordinated units. They also underestimate any species they consider primitive, which means they will not expect effective resistance from Earth. This was exactly what Kate had hoped to hear. Humanity's greatest advantage had always been their ability to adapt and work together in ways that other species found difficult to understand. While the Void Seekers relied on brute force and intimidation, humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of coordinated warfare. General Steve Parker's voice came through the communication system from his position at the Pentagon. Admiral, ground forces are in position and ready to implement urban defense protocols if the enemy reaches Earth's surface. Every major city has been converted into a fortress, and the civilian population is prepared to support military operations. Kate felt proud of how quickly her people had responded to the crisis. Within hours of receiving the alert from Ambassador Hayes, the entire human civilization had transformed from a peaceful society into the most formidable military force in the galaxy. Farmers had revealed themselves to be soldiers, and merchants had dropped their covers as intelligence agents. The main display showed the Void Seeker fleet as it entered the outer solar system. The massive biomechanical ships moved in a loose formation that spoke of supreme confidence in their own invincibility. They had destroyed dozens of worlds without facing serious resistance, and they expected Earth to fall just as easily. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the lead enemy vessel. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez reported from his station. Kate authorized the transmission to be displayed on the main screen. The image that appeared was the same shadowy figure that had addressed the Galactic Council days earlier. The Harvester's voice filled the command center like grinding metal. Primitive humans, the creature said with obvious contempt. We have observed your pathetic attempts to flee your dying world. Your species has been selected for harvest because you represent the weakest link in this galaxy's failed experiment. With peace, we will consume your world slowly so that the universe may witness what happens to those who forget their place in the natural order. The transmission ended, and Kate allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The enemy's arrogance was complete. They saw humanity as helpless victims rather than the apex predators they had evolved to become over millions of years of warfare on Earth. All stations, this is Admiral Sullivan, Kate announced over the fleet communication network. The enemy has entered our trap, and they are exactly where we want them. Begin Phase 1 of the engagement. Throughout the solar system, weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment and research stations began targeting the approaching Void Seeker vessels, ships that had appeared to be fleeing refugees. suddenly reversed course and formed attack formations around the enemy fleet. The moon's surface opened to reveal fighter squadrons that launched in perfect coordination. The Void Seekers found themselves surrounded by a military force that should not have existed. Their sensors showed human vessels appearing from every direction while weapons platforms emerged from asteroids and planetary surfaces throughout the system. What they had expected to be a simple harvest had become the most sophisticated military ambush in galactic history. Kate watched with satisfaction as her carefully planned deception unfolded. For 3,000 years, humanity had hidden their true nature behind smiles and friendly trade agreements. They had allowed the galaxy to believe they were primitive and peaceful while secretly building the most powerful military force the universe had ever seen. "Admiral, the enemy is attempting to retreat," Captain Morrison reported from his forward position. Kate's expression became grim. "Negative, Captain. They wanted to harvest humanity. Now they get to learn what it means to be hunted by humans. All units engage at will and show them why we never stop studying war. The Battle of Earth was about to begin, and the Void Seekers were about to discover that they had chosen the wrong species to test. Humanity had been waiting 3,000 years for this moment, and they were ready to remind the galaxy why humans were the most dangerous predators ever to leave their homeworld. The first human weapons to fire were the hidden missile platforms scattered throughout the asteroid belt. What the Void Seekers had believed to be simple mining equipment suddenly revealed itself as sophisticated weapon systems that had been waiting decades for this moment. Thousands of missiles streaked through space toward the enemy fleet while the bio-mechanical ships struggled to understand how they had walked into such a perfect trap. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the forward attack group from his converted diplomatic vessel Aurora. The ship that had carried him to peaceful negotiations for years had dropped its disguise to reveal advanced weapon systems and military-grade shields. Around him, dozens of other human vessels that had masqueraded as cargo haulers and research ships formed into attack formations that moved with precision no alien species had ever achieved. "All ships target the enemy's command vessel first," Jake ordered over the tactical network. "Intelligence reports suggest their fleet coordination will collapse if we eliminate their leadership structure." This was classic human military doctrine, adapted for space warfare. While other species relied on individual ship strength, humans had always understood that victory came through coordinated attacks that exploited enemy weaknesses. The Void Seekers were powerful, but they had never faced an enemy that fought as a unified force. The enemy responded to the human attack with confused fury. Their massive ships turned their dark energy weapons toward the approaching human fleet, but they could not target all the attacking vessels simultaneously. The Void Seekers had spent centuries fighting species that used predictable tactics and linear formations. Humanity's chaotic but coordinated approach bewildered them completely. Commander Lisa Jung coordinated the orbital defense from the International Space Station, which had revealed its true nature as a heavily armed battle platform. "Admiral, we're detecting confusion in enemy communications," she reported to the command center. "They're trying to establish new formations, but our attack patterns are disrupting their coordination." Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the battle unfold from her command center and felt a fierce pride in her species. Every human vessel was operating independently while maintaining perfect coordination with the overall battle plan. It was a level of tactical flexibility that no other species in the galaxy could match because it required the kind of individual initiative that most aliens found impossible to understand. The Void Seekers attempted to break through the human defensive lines using their traditional tactics of overwhelming firepower and direct assault. Several of their largest ships focused their weapons on what appeared to be the weakest section of the human formation. They expected to punch through and reach Earth, where they could begin harvesting the helpless civilian population. Instead, they flew directly into General Steve Parker's ground-based defense network. The lunar surface erupted with weapon systems that had been hidden beneath fake mining colonies for decades. Fighter squadrons launched from concealed hangars while orbital platforms revealed themselves around Jupiter and Mars, the void. Seekers found themselves trapped in a killing field that extended throughout the entire solar system. Dr. Susan Miller monitored enemy communications from her intelligence station and provided real-time tactical updates to the fleet commanders. "Admiral, the enemy leadership is becoming increasingly desperate," she reported. "They're attempting to use their psychological warfare tactics, but our forces are not responding as expected." This was another crucial advantage for humanity. The Void Seekers relied heavily on fear and intimidation to break enemy morale before beginning their harvest. They had never encountered a species that actually became more dangerous when threatened. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, who grew stronger and more focused when facing deadly opponents. Captain Morrison led his attack group in a daring assault on the enemy command ship. The massive biomechanical creature tried to defend itself with energy barriers and defensive weapons, but the human vessels swarmed around it like angry wasps. Each ship attacked from a different angle while maintaining constant communication with the others to avoid friendly fire incidents. "Jake, we're detecting structural damage to their primary command node," Lisa Chun reported from her navigation station. "Whatever those ships are made of, they can't handle this level of sustained firepower." Morrison smiled grimly as he watched his weapons tear into the alien vessel. "That's because they're used to fighting species that give up after the first exchange of fire. They've never had to deal with humans who just keep coming until the job is done." The battle raged for hours as human forces systematically dismantled the Void Seeker fleet piece by piece. Every time the aliens tried to establish a new formation or implement a different strategy, humanity adapted faster than they could respond. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt a herd of creatures that had never learned to fear predators. Commander Alex Turner emerged from the outer system where he had been shadowing the enemy fleet for days. His reconnaissance vessel had gathered crucial intelligence about Void Seeker weaknesses, and now he led a strike force of converted cargo ships against the enemy's supply vessels. The aliens had never expected their rear guard to be attacked by ships they had dismissed as harmless civilian craft. The Harvester's voice echoed across all communication frequencies as the ancient creature realized its fleet was being destroyed by a species it had considered primitive and harmless. "Impossible," the entity raged. "You are farmers and merchants. You have no weapons. You know nothing of war." Admiral Sullivan authorized a response that was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "You made the same mistake that every predator makes when it enters human territory. You assume that because we choose peace we are incapable of war. You forgot that the most dangerous creatures are those that have evolved to hunt other hunters." The tide of battle turned completely when human forces began using tactics that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. Ships that appeared to be destroyed suddenly exploded in coordinated attacks that damaged nearby enemy vessels. Human pilots rammed their fighters into critical enemy systems while ejecting at the last second to be rescued by nearby ships. General Parker's ground forces proved their worth when several Void Seeker assault ships managed to break through the orbital defenses and reach Earth's surface. The aliens expected to find helpless civilians, but instead encountered 8 billion humans who had been unconsciously trained for warfare their entire lives through competitive sports and strategic games. Every human city became a fortress, as hidden weapon caches were opened and civilian volunteers transformed into effective soldiers within hours. The Void Seekers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to multiply rather than diminish under pressure. When they destroyed one human position, 3 more would appear to take its place. Dr. Miller's intelligence network provided the information that led to the final victory. Her analysis revealed that the Void Seeker command structure depended on a single entity that controlled all fleet operations through biomechanical links. If the Harvester could be destroyed or captured, the entire enemy force would collapse into chaos. Captain Morrison volunteered to lead the assault on the Harvester's flagship despite the enormous risks involved. His ship, Aurora, had been modified with experimental weapons designed specifically to penetrate the biomechanical armor that protected the enemy command vessel. It would be a one-way mission, but Morrison understood that sometimes victory required ultimate sacrifice. The final assault began with a coordinated attack from every human vessel in the system. While the main fleet kept the enemy distracted, Morrison's strike team approached the Harvester's ship from an unexpected angle. They used debris from destroyed Void Seeker vessels as cover while approaching their target. Lisa, Jen piloted the Aurora through the maze of wreckage with skill that amazed even her experienced crew. Jake, we're approaching the target vessel, she reported. Their defensive systems are focused on the main battle. We have a clear approach to their command center. Morrison felt his heart racing as they closed the distance to their target. Everything humanity had worked for during 3,000 years of careful preparation came down to the next few minutes. The galaxy's freedom depended on whether a small group of humans could penetrate the defenses of the most dangerous predator in galactic history. The Aurora's weapons tore through the bio-mechanical hull of the enemy flagship as Morrison's team fought their way toward the command center where the Harvester waited. The ancient creature was larger and more terrifying than any human had imagined, but Morrison had trained his entire life for this moment. The final confrontation between human and alien took place in a chamber filled with organic technology that pulsed with dark energy. The Harvester towered over Morrison with claws that could tear through metal and eyes that burned with hatred accumulated over millions of years. But Morrison carried something the creature had never encountered before, the stubborn determination of a species that refused to accept defeat. When the Harvester fell, the entire Void Seeker fleet began to collapse as biomechanical links were severed and command structures failed.